Hello, Milwaukee Bucks fans. Welcome back to another episode of Bucks Latest presented by Fan Arch. I'm your host, Dean Simon. Please make sure to like, comment, and subscribe. We're still very much on the road to 1,000 subscribers. Just crossed the 800 subscriber threshold, though, so I would really appreciate everybody out there that has hit the big red button and has followed along for daily updates. Also, make sure to turn on those post notifications to stay up to date and in the know with all the latest Milwaukee Bucks updates. All right, so first thing on the docket is something that's not necessarily uber likely to happen, but Tyler Smith should definitely have an impact on the Bucks rotation in 2025-26, regardless of how big of a pipe dream that might be. Uh, it's crazy to think how deep this Milwaukee Bucks roster actually is when you consider the guys that are fighting for contracts and spots on the team that are at the end of the lineup. These are guys that when they go down to the G League, they are G League stars, and they show a bunch of potential, and Tyler Smith is no exception, and that just has to do with his size and his agility, his overall offensive skill set, his shooting ability. It makes no sense the things that he's able to do with his frame, and I've been very high on Tyler Smith, even though this past summer league was definitely a step in the wrong direction. But going into this year, maybe he'll be able to secure a little bit more of an opportunity, specifically because of Kyle Kuzma and the slip that he's currently on and that he's been on for the past calendar year or so. And for Fansided's Franco Luna came out with an article basically saying that, again, while in my opinion it may be somewhat of a pipe dream, that Tyler Smith could eventually develop into the player that replaces Kyle Kuzma at the power forward position, I would say, because I would see Tyler Smith more playing at the four instead of the three, and I feel as though that's obvious. But for in terms of Kyle Kuzma's minutes at the power forward position, those could easily be replaced by a guy like Tyler Smith if he just becomes a little bit more consistent on the offensive end and stays strong and agile on the defensive end. But Franco Luna said himself, while the front office wastes time agonizing over Kyle Kuzma's expensive mediocrity, their salvation might already be sitting at the end of the bench. That's because Tyler Smith, while not the flashiest player in the world, might be exactly what the Milwaukee Bucks need. The sophomore forward's flashes showed us what he could be, a player comfortable with spotting up in the corners and rotating defensively without needing constant touches to stay engaged. And that's something that I've always loved about Tyler Smith, is that he's always willing to be a great catch and shoot option. He's always willing to let it fly. I think more than anything, his confidence is what has always attracted me to him as a player. And when it comes to a guy that's of his size, and when he does catch the ball on the wing or in the corner, most people would shy away from the fact that he's, about to let that thing go. But he shoots it confidently every time, regardless if it's a make or miss. His stroke looks good. He has great form again relative to his size. So he's someone that I can really see making an impact this year. Again, the summer league left a lot to be desired, and I can totally understand everybody's reservations with Tyler Smith after that kind of performance where he just could not throw a rock in the ocean. But he'll have a lot more opportunity, especially if he starts in the G League next season with the Wisconsin Herd, and he can, kind of build up his confidence a little bit, and stay efficient. That's the biggest thing, because if you want a guy like Tyler Smith to come in and replace Kyle Kuzma, most of all, he needs to be efficient. That's kind of the baseline for taking a guy like Kyle Kuzma's minutes, who in the playoffs was the complete antithesis of efficiency. So that's what the Bucks are going to be looking for most in terms of a potential Kyle Kuzma replacement. So that's the kind of guy that Tyler Smith would have to be. Anyways, moving forward, going towards a full on prediction from this time is from Clutch Points Reshav Bot, that the Milwaukee Bucks will go around 45 wins. They didn't give a specific win total, but Rishabh Bhat says that the Bucks will finish as a team 500 or above for the 10th consecutive season, but with a lower win total than, I believe, the 48 last season. And he said that the Bucks have just won one playoff series in the last 4 years and do not look closer to winning more based on offseason activity. And while the possibility still remains of a late acquisition, options may already be too thin. And even that, I feel as though it's a little bit ambitious to think that the Bucks are going to pull off the craziest move at the deadline, or just before the season tips off. Anyways, he continued with saying, keeping that in mind, only something bizarrely irregular will need to occur for the current roster to produce anything worthy in the postseason this time around. We predict them to finish around the 45 win mark, finishing as a 500 team for the 10th consecutive time, also with a lower win total than last season. While he is critical of the Bucks and says that this season, they will regress and it'll be mostly because of losing Damian Lillard. He's still offered a little bit of positivity, a little bit of hope. And that's something I can really appreciate because again, we know how much the media likes to bash the Milwaukee Bucks, especially after making a move like the Damian Lillard wave and stretch. The talking heads are going to take any opportunity they possibly can to just beat down on this team for whatever reason, and that's the new opportunity. So, I guess I understand it from their perspective, but I appreciate this writer's positivity because more of an unbiased party, and I feel as though it's getting a little bit harder for the grander NBA world to realize that the Bucks had a good offseason, but that's something we'll get into later. Rishav Bhat then says, "Of course, that does not mean there is no room for optimism. However, the Bucks will need the likes of Kyle Kuzma and Porter Jr. to deliver huge seasons." Of course, we just talked about Kyle Kuzma and whether the possibility of him actually contributing to winning basketball is feasible. It doesn't look like it at the moment, but things can change on a dime in the NBA. The arrival of Turner's defensive engine means Giannis can fully embrace his forward role, and the possibilities remain interesting despite the absence of a high caliber ball handler. Which interesting he says that because I feel like it's more widely known that Giannis will most likely take on the brunt of the point guard responsibilities for the Milwaukee Bucks. Maybe he won't be handling at the top of the key every single possession coming down the floor, but more often than not, Giannis is going to take care of those responsibilities. So they will have a high caliber ball handler and playmaker at that. But I do understand what he's saying that he's going to mesh with Miles Turner, and that's going to be on both sides of the ball. And we can expect to see positive things from both of them as a tandem on both ends. So I do appreciate the optimism, and I'm someone that loves to be fairly optimistic, specifically about this team, because it's definitely something that you don't see much of in the media nowadays. But on to the next. We're going to continue on that note because Fansided's Nicholas Chiarito came out with a little piece that made me very happy to read because no one is really labeling the Milwaukee Bucks offseason in 2025 a success outright. I feel like people are saying that they improved upon or at least stayed consistent with maintaining their depth, and there's always a but there's always a caveat. But the Milwaukee Bucks were able to do some good work this offseason in terms of bringing back key guys that were feared to have possibly been leaving for salaries north of $8 to $10 million annually, but they were able to bring those same guys back for around $6 million or $3 million. They were able to do a lot with what they could, especially after the wave and stretch and having that money come off the books still, even though Damian Lillard wasn't a part of the team and will not be a part of the team. They were able to do a lot with what they had. And Nicholas Chiarito, he basically really highlighted the Bucks' depth, which has become underrated. And this really stuck out to me. So one of the bigger questions NBA fans on the Buck one of the bigger questions NBA fans, I guess, have about the Bucks is who will score besides Giannis. The answer is they have four other players who either have or are capable of averaging 15 points a game. Those being Bobby Portis, Miles Turner, Kyle Kuzma, and Kevin Porter Jr., who we must not forget that Kevin Porter Jr. was a guy that was averaging 19 points a game on pretty decent efficiency, apparently, or especially for a volume scorer of his type, where he's a pretty savvy ball handler and he's just getting shots up off the dribble mostly. That's the most of his shot diet is tough contested shots off the dribble. He was still putting them down at about 44% from the field, 36 or more percent from three. So Kevin Porter Jr. specifically has proven to be a somewhat consistent scorer. He's not, blowing your mind in terms of efficiency, but he's someone that has proven to be a reliable option. And I feel as though the Bucks' other moves this offseason have kind of overshadowed the fact that Bobby Portis was also a guy that has returned. I feel like it's weird, but I see more people talking about Kyle Kuzma and how he's going to be going into next season. And, maybe you could include me in that. But there's going to be more talk about if Kyle Kuzma can have a resurgent season more than if Bobby Portis can have a similar caliber season to that he's had the past 3 years, as he's been a consensus sixth man of the year contender for the past 3-4 seasons, developed into one of, if not the best and most efficient bench scorer in the NBA. If Bobby Portis can maybe take another leap up and creep up towards that 15 point a game range, or maybe even somewhere between 15 and 17 points, because we all know that that would help this Bucks bench drastically, even though they did do a good job with depth. So adding all those guys together. Bobby Portis potentially hitting that 15 point a game mark, Miles Turner doing it as he's proven to be able to do, and Kevin Porter Jr. the same thing, and Kyle Kuzma. There's there's so much potential for this team if everything goes right. And it's a very easy thing to say. Everything going right is easier said than done. But there truly is a level of untapped potential with this team that I feel like only Bucks fans are going to realize or try and think about in this moment. And then, of course, once the ball gets rolled out for the regular season, we're going to see how these things actually come into effect. But there's a blueprint here. The bench is stronger than some may realize, and that itself warrants some positivity going into 2025-26. And finally, we're going to get to an idea that's been thrown out there, kind of refuted by certain sources and people saying that it wouldn't make sense or it would, but that Russell Westbrook could be a potential target still in free agency, as he hasn't been picked up by a team yet for the Milwaukee Bucks. And my only thing with this is that even though I don't feel as though the move itself would be the best for the Milwaukee Bucks right now, especially after bringing back KPJ, bringing in Cole Anthony, having Ryan Rollins trying to leap up the depth chart. The only reason why I do believe it could be a good idea in theory is because of how Westbrook attacks the basket, as we've all come to know, and that he would certainly take on a bench role, and he could be a guy that plays not necessarily with Giannis, but off of Giannis very well when either are on the court at separate times. Because after Giannis comes out of the game and he's going towards the rim with a full head of steam for the first 8 to 9 minutes of the first quarter, then you have Russell Westbrook come in and he's going to do the same exact thing, and he's not going to give the opposing team any time to rest or think about what's happening. He's just going to keep ramming the ball at the rim, even with Giannis's presence not there. So in that way, as bringing in Russell Westbrook to be that guy that keeps pressure on the rim, even without Giannis on in the lineup or on the floor, I can see that working. But in terms of their pairing on the floor together, that may be a nightmare. And I'm not saying that because Russell Westbrook nor Giannis can shoot effectively that it's been impossible or that it will be impossible for them to coexist together. But it certainly makes it a lot less likely. And Bleacher Report's Andy Bailey he came out with a piece as well, detailing and kind of throwing out some different destinations that Russell Westbrook could head to as a free agent. Names the Knicks, I believe, were one of them as well, and that's another place I don't really see. But he said, and I quote, Westbrook and Giannis Antetokounmpo styles could certainly clash. Neither's three-point shot commands a ton of respect. Both like to control the ball and individual possessions, and both like to get to the paint. If they shared the floor, the offense could start to feel awfully cramped. But they also have a backcourt rotation currently populated by KPJ, Cole Anthony, Gary Trent Jr., and AJ Green. There are some strengths there, but it's also not hard to imagine Westbrook forcing his way into some minutes. And you could see again, because of Russell Westbrook's ability to pressure the rim, that he could fit well into a lineup that also includes Gary Trent Jr. or AJ Green or Torian Prince or Portis or Miles Turner. The Bucks do have a formula there. They have the ingredients to make a lineup work, or multiple lineup configurations work with Russell Westbrook on the roster. But overall, it just doesn't seem like the highest probability of a thing to happen this offseason, especially again after the Bucks made all these decisions. Again, bringing in Cole Anthony and expecting him to have somewhat of a large impact on the Bucks point guard room and guard scoring room in general. So don't really see that this is a possibility, but the fact that it's still being put out there, I guess it's saying something, because Russ can still definitely contribute to a competitive team. This most recent run with the Denver Nuggets really proved that, even I think he's going into year 18, that he is still, like, now as he's transitioned into a sixth man role, that he's one of the best at it in the league. Excuse me. But I really think that he could have an impact on a winning team. might not be the Bucks, might not be a great fit. But anyways, that'll be it for me today. Thank you very much for watching another episode of Bucks Latest presented by Fan Arch. Please like, comment, and subscribe. Hit that big red button below. I would really, really appreciate it. Also, if you could turn on post notifications to stay up to date and in the know with all the latest Milwaukee Bucks updates, would appreciate that as well. All right, I will see you guys in the next one. Go Bucks.